There was a hexagonal motif throughout my institution's production of the musical Spring Awakening, book by Stephen Sater and music by Duncan Sheik. The motif was inspired by the idea of the space as a kind of abstract broken beehive. The director, costume designer, and scenic designer wanted to highlight the highly ordered, hive-mind culture that the children of Spring Awakening live in. As the assistant costume designer for this production, I was asked to design custom buttons as one way of incorporating the motif into the costumes. The semester of the production, I was also enrolled in a drafting class and decided to use what I was learning in class to design a button using Vectorworks. After drafting the button, I learned how to 3D print on a MakerBot. Over 30 buttons were 3D printed, painted, and attached to the girls' dresses for the production. Before I started drafting the buttons in Vectorworks, I looked at sketches from the costume designer as well as mock-up images from our shop manager. I used both of these to know how big to make the buttons to fit with the costume designer's vision. I first drafted the button in 2D in Vectorworks. After drafting in 2D, I began extruding using the 4 different views of the button I had created. Then I did my first print with our MakerBot. However, these buttons were just a little off. They needed to be more equilateral for our designer, and we decided that the shank being 3D printed on them would not be the most durable. After receiving feedback from the costume designer, I went into Vectorworks and adjusted my 3D rendering to be more equilateral. I then duplicated the button and made it into a sheet so that we could print about 29 buttons every print. After the buttons were all printed, we attached metal shanks to the back using E6000 adhesive. The buttons were then spray painted black. After the buttons were spray painted black, we started testing out metallic finishes of rub and buff on the buttons. We ended up going for an antique gold finish. In these final production photos, courtesy of my institution, you can see the buttons attached to the pinafores. These pinafores and the rest of the costumes were designed by Kelsey Blotter.